Right, looks like I can sneak in another video to you, Gary. Finish the rest of that video. Waking up in the morning, a classic one. I get a lovely classic, that one. We've all done it. Even if it's not, I'm going to get out. What could it be? I'll go for a run tomorrow morning. I'll get up early and go for a run. Now, or even more standard, the alarm clock goes off, and one dwarf says, time to get out of bed. Another dwarf says, just 5 minutes more. But both of those, again, I'll just say what I said in the last video, because I'm becoming more and more comfortable saying it. I'd be happy that, because it actually does happen every now and then, that somebody says, I'll go for a run tomorrow morning, and they actually do. In other words, active dwarf just wakes up dominant. And, you know, lazy dwarf that says 5 minutes more, or says, well, it's a bit rainy outside, we'll go tomorrow, isn't listened to. So one dwarf can, and that's how you'd feel it. This is why I'm comfortable with it. You'd feel, that's how you'd feel. The alarm clock goes off, and you go, right, time for a run, and whoof, hush, hush, and you're off. You've woken up as active dwarf. But for most people, in most opportunity, most times, we wake up as dwarf, and we don't go running. But it is possible to wake up as active dwarf. In other words, what I'm stressing there is it's not, as you said, actual words where we watch ourselves in that video, and it doesn't have to be. You actually wake up as active dwarf, and you can watch active dwarf from the viewpoint of lazy dwarf. See what I mean? Or if lazy dwarf woke up as active, yeah, you could watch lazy dwarf from the viewpoint of active dwarf, or a third dwarf you wake up as, and watch lazy dwarf and active dwarf having a fight about who's going to win this one. I think we had that one. Yeah, fighting for the spotlight. I'm perfectly happy with fighting for the spotlight. The spotlight, obviously, being cone up to the air, some sort of metaphor, analogy for consciousness, getting into the spotlight. Yeah, I'm well happy with that sort of thing. Come back to Thinking and Feeling. I've noticed Douglas Hofstadter. I must put in a note for him. That book was after his wife had died, a long time after, and his wife is throughout the book. He is still heartbroken. Okay, that's one thing for him. I watched that video. I remember when you said something about a dustbuster. I remember seeing that video. Wasn't he doing it with one of those bootlace tie things, and he had lists and lists of words? That one. I didn't like that one either. And another thing to note about Douglas Hofstadter and the book, not that I expect you to read it or think you will read it, or wouldn't even recommend you do read it, is that Matt absolutely hated it. Absolutely hated it. All right, so that's Hofstadter. He's a gentleman, really is a gentleman, and his wife. He's still cut up about his wife, and the book. It's shot through that book, and you could even say the book's a bit of a love story as well. Okay, she's there. All right, Thinking and Feeling. I'm not as upset or hung up on thoughts and feelings as you are, but I do see a difference, and I do see, I do think they are worth separating, and talking about why they are worth separating. What to say about them, I'm not particularly sure, except for feelings. On Antonio Damasio, I know it's quoting a book and you don't like that too much, but if you read his books, he gives a very good, it's white coat stuff, boffin, about how the feelings are manifested, and they're all bodily. All feelings are bodily. Fear, you feel it in your body. That's how you feel all these feelings. How you do envy, I don't know. So, but I'll just go with that. All feelings are. If the brain, I know this is off dwarves. I don't know how to put it into dwarves and all that at all. If the brain wants itself to feel some sort of a feeling, it sends out actions like to go wiggly hand, but instead of going wiggly hand, it goes wobbly tummy, and it actually makes a wobbly tummy, and then the nerves in the wobbly tummy and the tummy that normally measure wobbly tumminess send that information back up to the brain, and then you go, well, wobbly tummy, and detects, and the information's gone down to say increase heartbeat. It's increased the heartbeat. There's receptors, very few nerves around the heart, but that's a different matter. But that information comes up to the brain. In other words, the brain makes the body do things that it knows that the brain will interpret as a feeling. Yeah, got that slightly. As in, anger comes on the temples and all that sort of stuff with the heartbeat as well. The different tune is played on the body by the brain, knowing that the brain will again pick up that tune. If that helps any, I don't know if it does. Yeah, and there'll be a tag for each. If it comes with compressed temples, good heartbeat, and a tight chest, it could be anger, that sort of thing. But then that's up to the brain to interpret those tags, as it were. So I'll leave that at that. But we watch ourselves is, again, what I'm stressing. I think that's, for me, what I would be trying to talk you out of. Not for any particular reason, but I think it's a generally understood way of looking at things that doesn't have to be like that. I think with a bit of persuasion, an awful lot of persuasion, I could get you to think as though you were a dwarf watching other dwarfs. Either acting out as that dwarf, or you could actually be whichever. But even actually, that's going to confuse this video, because I was taught by reading books and listening to things to do something. It's a semi-Buddhist way of being two characters and having one character watch the other character. So for a long time now, well, a long time, I don't know, 15 years or so, I have been living on and off as myself or a character watching myself. So I could have taught myself to be another dwarf watching a principal dwarf or something. So maybe I am slightly odd on that one. But I don't think it has to be that the dwarves are acting there in their air conditioning, their feelings that permeate through whoever's going to get onto the stage, or some are more susceptible to different atmospheres that have been created. There might be bold dwarf that says, although there's a miserable atmosphere, it's going to stand here and do something bold anyway, like getting out of bed in the morning and going for a run. But the others are more affected by a damp atmosphere, and they become more damp, or whatever it might be. But I do not think that we have to explain where we are watching it. I'd be happy to try and explain it, which I'll try and do one day, through the eyes of whichever dwarf is in the spotlight at a particular time. And I know what I've said about watching dwarves and being a dwarf and watching two other dwarves doesn't fit brilliantly with being in the spotlight, because we know the spotlight means consciousness, and we'd like to think probably we could only be one dwarf at one time. And how would how would it be? But the spotlight can go from one dwarf over to another dwarf, or the spotlight can go from one dwarf to two dwarves, and you can be seeing other dwarves simultaneously from the position of two dwarves. I know, it gets horrible. But again, I'll say, I try to leave you away from, it isn't obligatory to try and explain seeing the dwarves and all the acting happening. I think it is possible to explain the whole lot just with the stage, without the audience or anybody watching. All the things, even have the air conditioning watching the actors, but I don't think we need any other bits of kit thrown on the stage or put in the theatre. But maybe we do.